The young and the restless spoilers a hostage for Christmas. Tessa had always tried to embrace the holiday season, stringing up lights, humming carols under her breath, and baking gingerbread cookies that perfumed her small apartment with cinnamon and hope. Yet this year's Christmas was destined to be stained with fear, anxiety, and the lingering memories of past trauma. She had once been kidnapped before, snatched from the safety of her life and held in a grim, confined space. That time, rescue had come swiftly, and she'd been able to reclaim some semblance of normality once it was all over. This time, however, the situation was different. She had been taken again, only now, her captors were far more monstrous, both in intent and action. Ian Ward, the twisted orchestrator of countless schemes, and his accomplice Jordan had made Tessa their pawn in a sick, strategic game. She'd been dragged from her familiar surroundings into a cold, empty room with no windows, no holiday cheer, and no comfort beyond her desperate hope that someone would notice her absence. Mariah was their real prize. Ian Ward had tried to get close to his daughter before, to lure her back into his web of manipulation and twisted family values. But Mariah had grown stronger and wiser over time. She kept her distance, guarded herself physically and emotionally, and it seemed that Ian could not reach her on his own. So he had chosen a new tactic, Tessa's abduction. If Mariah wanted Tessa to survive, she would have to step forward, return to Ian's side, and accept the role of daughter that he had never truly earned. The threats and the tension in the days leading up to Tessa's capture, ominous letters and cryptic text messages had begun to arrive, notes laced with threat and foreboding. They spoke of regret, of old wounds reopening, and of a cruel choice that would soon have to be made. Tessa, initially brushing them off as the ramblings of a malicious prankster, grew increasingly uneasy. When she noticed she was being followed on her errands and caught strange silhouettes lingering in the shadows, her heart began to hammer in her chest. She mentioned it to Mariah, who tried to reassure her. Surely it was just some fan who had become too attached to Tessa's music, or a petty trick by someone holding a grudge. They never imagined it was Ian Ward. But the tone of the messages turned darker and more personal. "If you love her, you'll come to me," one of them read. Another message, "You know what I want, Mariah. You always have." This psychological warfare escalated until one cold December evening, Tessa simply vanished. One moment she was returning home from a late recording session, her guitar case slung over her shoulder. The next, she was gagged, blindfolded, and forced into a van. She fought, screamed against the restraints, but the walls absorbed her cries. Whoever had taken her knew exactly what they were doing, leaving no trace, making no demands directly. Instead, they let the silence speak volumes, expecting everyone in Genoa City to worry, speculate, and panic. A hostage of monsters, the kidnappers did not resemble any thug Tessa had imagined. There was a strange precision to their actions, a calm cruelty that made her blood run cold. They treated her as though she were nothing more than a piece in a puzzle, a bargaining chip to force Mariah's hand. And that's exactly what she was, leverage. Tessa's well-being had become Ian Ward's instrument of control. He aimed his threats like a weapon toward Mariah's heart, hoping to shatter her resolve. Tessa's voice grew hoarse from pleas for mercy that went unanswered. She tried everything, reason, desperation, bargaining. But Jordan, Ian's loyal associate, merely crossed her arms and watched indifferently. The kidnappers would not explain themselves, and they certainly would not listen. They didn't beat Tessa senseless, they didn't need to. The psychological torment of isolation and uncertainty was enough. They left her tied to a wooden chair in a barren room, its only furnishing a solitary light bulb that buzzed overhead. No festive wreaths, no candy canes or gentle holiday tunes, just the echoing emptiness that magnified her terror. Aria's safety, a cold comfort during this entire ordeal, Tessa's thoughts turned repeatedly to Aria, the child who had given her and Mariah a renewed sense of purpose. Aria, who had come into their lives and given them the stability and love they both desperately needed. If there was any shred of relief in this nightmare, it was that Ian had chosen not to involve Aria. He left the child untouched, presumably considering children blameless in this war of revenge. It was a twisted logic that gave Tessa a small ounce of comfort. If Arya was safe, at least one good thing remained intact in their fractured world. This focus on sparing children only highlighted the darkness of Ian's methods. He was ruthless, but not chaotic. There was a plan behind every move. He wanted Mariah to believe that she alone could save Tessa. He wanted to lure Mariah away from the sanctuary she had built and force her back into his toxic embrace. Tessa knew Ian would do whatever it took to ensure Mariah came running. And Mariah, she feared, might just sacrifice herself to save the woman she loved. Fear and silence days passed without any form of contact. Tessa's mind raced, each hour feeling longer than the last. Her captors offered no explanations. They provided just enough water and stale food to keep her alive. The silence was crushing. She could only imagine the panic raging outside this hidden prison. What would Mariah think? What would she do? Tessa pictured Mariah's face, those concerned eyes, the determined set of her jaw whenever she felt wronged or threatened. And now, Tessa was in danger because of Ian's obsession with Mariah. The thought both enraged and terrified her. She prayed that Mariah would not walk into a trap. She knew that the cost of rescue might be too high. Yet, at the same time, Tessa hoped against hope that help would come, that her friends in Genoa City would band together to find her before Ian could carry out his ultimate threat. Watching and waiting, Jordan observed all of this with a detached curiosity. She was patient, content to watch Ian Ward's twisted drama unfold. Jordan had never been one to show mercy. She was fascinated by power, by the breaking of wills, and by the ripple effects of a carefully orchestrated abduction. While Ian maintained the facade of a misguided father trying to reclaim his daughter, Jordan knew better. This was about domination, control, and forcing Mariah into a choice with no good outcomes. And so Jordan waited, quietly delighting in the uncertainty and fear that seeped into the hearts of those who loved Tessa. She relished the knowledge that everyone in Genoa City would soon start asking questions. Where was Tessa? Why had she disappeared at this time of year, when the city was alive with winter festivities and holiday cheer? Would the police suspect a crime of passion, a random act of violence, or something more sinister? The unfolding game outside of Tessa's barren cell, the world carried on. Shops bustled with last-minute shoppers, carolers sang beneath twinkling lights, and families gathered for warm dinners. Yet somewhere in the city, a silent standoff had begun. Ian held Tessa's life in his hands, and Mariah held the key to Tessa's freedom or her demise. Ian had not contacted anyone directly. He wanted to let the tension build, to let Mariah and the others stew in their confusion and dread. He would choose the perfect moment to present his ultimatum. Mariah could come back to him, accept him as her father, or watch Tessa suffer unimaginable consequences. The brilliance, or cruelty, of his plan lay in its timing. With each passing hour, the pressure grew, and the holidays, meant to bring joy, became suffused with fear and dread. For Tessa, trapped and alone, this Christmas season would be haunted by darkness and uncertainty. She clung to one thought: Mariah would never abandon her. Yet, paradoxically, she also knew that Mariah must not sacrifice herself to a man as twisted as Ian Ward. The tension weighed heavily on Tessa's heart. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to think of a way out, some small detail or weak link in the chain that could help her break free. The uncertain future as Jordan patiently observed and Ian planned his next move, Tessa could only pray that someone, Nick, Sharon, Ray, Chance, even Jack or Victor, might piece together the clues and find her before it was too late. She prayed that Mariah would be wiser than Ian's manipulations and that they could both emerge from this nightmare unscathed. But deep down, Tessa knew that this was not a simple battle. It was a labyrinth of emotional warfare, where every decision could cost a life. With Christmas drawing near, the countdown had begun, and in the silent darkness of her prison, Tessa braced herself for the next move in Ian Ward's twisted game.